We're going to start talking about the name al-malik of Allah. So Allah is uniquely described himself in this surah, or in the opening ayah, with 4 names: al-malik, al-quddus, al-aziz, al-hakim. Many places in the Quran, Allah mentions 2 of his names together, like al-aziz, al-hakim, ghafurun rahim, things like that, right? So this surah is unique because the opening has 4 names together. So that is a special feature of this surah. So the first of those names is al-malik. It's used rarely in the Quran. It's not as common as you might think. But let's talk about a little bit of where the word malik comes from. So the word mallak, or the verb mallaka, actually has to do with making something hard. Like, you know, when you make the dough and the bread, and the dough becomes tougher, that's actually tamlik of the bread. From it also comes the idea of the milak of something is the foundation of a building, or something that you build on top of. Malakut tariq is the middle of the road, meaning the most firm part of the road. Qawaimu kulli dabbatin mulukuhu, the feet of an animal that it stands firm on. They're also called the muluk of it, meaning all of it has to do with firmness, toughness, stability, that sort of thing. These are the meanings in it. When you have control over something, that's called malaka an shay, or command over something is a malaka. Malaka nafsahu, to have control over yourself, is mulkun nafs. If you're able to control your emotions, or if you're able to control your behavior. So these are, the word keeps having to do with kingdom, or actually control and power and stability. These are the recurring themes inside of the word mulk. Then comes the idea of when you hold something firm in your hand, then you have mulk over it. So it's something firmly, you're grasping something firmly. So it's actually interestingly also used when a man is very possessive over his wife. Then they actually say malak al-mar'a. It doesn't mean he owned the woman, it actually means he's very possessive over her, like very dominating or controlling over her, etc. Now, how is this used for Allah in the Quran? First of all, in the Fatiha we have 2 readings, Maliki Yawmiddin and Maliki Yawmiddin, right? So al-malik and malik are 2 different words. So let me help you understand them in easy language. Malik means owner. So I'm the malik of this laptop, the malik of this laptop. But I'm definitely not the malik of this laptop. That would be a little bit dramatic of me, because I am the owner of this laptop, but I'm definitely not the sovereign king ruler of this laptop. Okay, so you can own a car, you can own a pen, you can own a shirt, but you can't declare yourself the sovereign king of your t-shirt. It doesn't make sense. So the idea of kingdom is vast. The word malik is used for vast territory. You could be the king of an island, you could be the king of a country, king of an empire, etc. Right? In America, we use the king very loosely. This is the king of pizza, and this is the king of tires. The tire, come to the tire king for your special discount, etc. So they use these words king loosely, but the idea of kingdom is actually a vast empire of some sense. Interestingly, a phrase in the Quran combines both of these concepts. Malik al-mulk, Qul Allahumma Malik al-mulk, right? Which is 2 different concepts. It actually means the owner of kingdom. So the word for ownership is milk. So it would be Malik al-milk or Malik al-mulk. So one would be the owner of ownership or the king of kingdom. But Allah fused the 2 phrases together. He said Malik al-mulk, which means the owner of kingdom. So let's understand the difference between owner and king a little bit deeper. When I own something, like if I own this machine, then I'm engaged with it, I'm taking care of it, I have more direct access to it. But if I'm the king of a nation, do I have control over everyone living under my nation? No, because generally I have authority, but I don't have direct reach to everything that's under my kingdom. I have to have advisors, governors who have to have their own soldiers or their departments, and those departments have lieutenants and so on and so forth, right? Until you get to, for example, a government is at the top, you have the president or something, right? In the old days you have a king. And at the bottom you have somebody working at the post office. But the post office worker works for a department which answers to a department which answers to a department, and eventually goes up all the way to the ultimate authority, you understand? But in that little department he acts like he's the king, the post office guy, right? But the idea is that he's the malik doesn't do direct engagement, but the Malik does. The Malik does direct engagement. Allah takes both of those names and fuses them together when He says Malik al-Mulk. Another name of Allah is Malik in the Quran. في مقعد صدق عند مليك مقتدر. Malik means the one who will always stay the king. It's ism sifa, so the one who will remain king forever. Because kingdoms, what comes in your mind when you think of kingdom? Somebody inherited the kingdom, or somebody usurped or took kingdom by force. That's how you get kingdom. And eventually that king, whoever took it, is going to get old, and he's going to either have a brother or a son, or a younger son versus an older son. Some drama is going to happen, right? And kingdom is going to get passed on. The king cannot hold on to the kingdom forever. Allah's name is also Malik, which means the forever king. The forever king. That's one of Allah's names, okay? Then, the interesting thing about the word Malik when it comes on its own, al-Malik, it's both times associated with, two times associated with al-Quddus, the next name that's coming. Al-Malik al-Quddus is here. Al-Malik al-Quddus will also come in Surah al-Hashr. Okay, so al-Malik al-Quddus as-Salam al-Mu'min al-Muhaymin, right there. And of course, there's also the phrase فَتَعَالَ اللَّهُ الْمَلِكُ الْحَقِّ, which means how high Allah is, the ultimately deserving king. The king who is the king who deserves to be the king. Also because when you think of kingship, you sometimes think of a person who doesn't deserve it. Right? They don't truly deserve to be the king. They're the useless prince that became the king. Or these people, they took over power and they unjustifiably took over the kingdom and therefore they became the king, but they're not the rightful king. You know, so many movies you haven't seen because you're Islamic are about fights against the unrightful, unjustified king, and the rightful king comes and wants to claim his, make his claim on the throne, and there's a whatever drama happens, right? So the idea of al-Malik al-Haq is the rightful king. And Allah mentions over and over again in the Quran, Lahul Mulk. He owns all kingdom. He owns all kingdom. It's a very interesting concept. Allah Himself is the king, but then He says He owns all kingdom. What's the difference between these two? One is about Allah Himself. He's the king. The other is every king that ever existed is actually owned by Allah. He owns all kingdom. He decides when they live and when they die. Here they are thinking they decide when someone lives and someone dies, but actually Allah is deciding whether they live and whether they die, which is why Allah says Lahul Mulku wa Lahul Hamd Yuhyi wa Yumeet. Lahul Mulk, like in Surah Al-Hadid, Lahu Mulku Samawati wal Ard Yuhyi wa Yumeet. He owns the kingdom of the skies and the earth. He gives life and He gives death. You're distracting now. They're looking at you. There's so many people looked at you right now. It's like, I wanted to look at you. That's what happens. I keep an eye on you people. Okay, anyway. I've been doing this a long time. See, I have no problem with awkward moments. I have this, it's okay. It's okay. It happens. There was one time I was giving a khutbah, this guy got a phone call. First row. Okay, if you're gonna pick up your phone, at least be in the back row. He's in the first row. And some people, when they get a call, long distance call, they think it's still 1975 where they have to talk extra loud because you're going across the ocean. It's a WhatsApp call, dude. Everybody gets the same message. Like, it's not a different. Hello, is everything okay? Yeah. How's uncle? Uncle's good. Yeah, over and out. It's not a walkie-talkie, man. So I get a khutbah. The guy starts doing this, and I was like, in the middle of the khutbah, I just stopped my khutbah. I was like, this is a really interesting conversation. Let me just finish. So he took a full 90 seconds, finished this conversation. I was like, is uncle okay? He goes, yeah, he's okay. I was like, okay. Anyway, so al-Malik actually has to do with rule, ownership, and control. Let's talk about these three concepts: rule, ownership, and control. Is it possible that you can have rule without ownership? For example, the government you live under has rule, but does it have ownership of your property? It doesn't, right? So there's some level of your own ownership, even though somebody else has the rule. You have, and the flip can happen. You can have ownership, but you don't have what? Rule. You have ownership over your car, but you don't have the rule over it to drive however you want. Okay? You can have ownership over your house, but there are rules in your neighborhood and you cannot modify it however you want. You cannot make whatever changes you want. There are regulations in place. You have ownership, but you don't have rule. So those two things can exist separately. You can also have rule without control. The government in a country can have rule, but does crime still happen? Yeah, so they have rule, but they don't have control. Okay? Forget crime, even in a government, there's a president, there's a vice president, there's a chancellor, there's whatever other roles. Does the president, the higher level authority, does he necessarily control the behaviors of everybody in his own office? No. In fact, forget government, even in a business. If many of you run a business, you are the owner of the business, so you have the rule, and your own employees are not under your control. Like the moment you look away, things are happening. And even when you're looking, they're looking straight at you and doing the wrong thing. You're like, why did I hire you? You know? So anyway, so you can have ownership, you can have rule without control. You can also have ownership without control. A man can own a horse, for example, and the horse is not under his control, right? It's not under your control. And in fact, one of the most interesting examples of ownership, supposed ownership, is our body, right? If you think of one thing that you have complete autonomy over, it's your own body. But I don't have control over, things like my cholesterol or, my heart rate, or, I can't control those things the way that I would like to. I cannot control aging the way I would like to. It's not under my control. If your eyesight is getting weaker, you can't control that. You can't control your allergies. So we don't even actually we have some level of ownership over our bodies, but we actually don't really have control. So when Allah describes himself as ultimately al-malik, he's taking all three things at once. He's taking rule, he's taking ownership, and he's taking control, which in the real sense, nobody else can have. You can't have all three yourself. It's impossible. And that's why he's al-malik, the ultimate. He's not just a king, he's the ultimate king. Now, the other interesting thing in another ayah in Ali Imran, Allah did something really remarkable when it comes to kingdom or ownership. Allah separated it from dignity. He says, تُؤْتِ الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتَنْزِعُ الْمُلْكَ مِنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُعِزُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ. He separated those two concepts. In other words, Allah says, we tell Allah, we declare to Allah, you give kingdom to whoever you want, and you take it away from whoever you want, and you honor whoever you want, and you humiliate whoever you want. You know what that means? Sometimes Allah will take kingdom away from someone, but they still have honor. Sometimes Allah will give kingdom to someone, but they have humiliation. Separate concepts. In this world, we think whoever has kingdom has honor, and whoever has no kingdom has been humiliated. But Allah says, no, that's a separate thing that He gives and takes away, and honor and humiliation are separate things that He gives and takes away. So for example, Ibrahim alayhi salam has no kingdom, but he's honored. And Namrud has a lot of kingdom, but he's humiliated. You understand? Fir'aun has a lot of kingdom, but he's humiliated. And Musa alayhi salam has no kingdom, but he's honored. So he can give and take as he wants. And then he can give both to someone. He can give honor and kingdom, like Dawood alayhi salam, Sulaiman alayhi salam. He can give both to them. Or he can take both away from them, like Ayyub alayhi salam. Or, he can be humiliated by his family and even tested in that way. Or Yusuf alayhi salam. He's being humiliated by people being falsely accused to be thrown in jail. And then he can give both back to him. He give his reputation back, he give kingdom to him, authority to him. Both of those came back to him. So this is up to Allah Azza wa Jalla. And when we think of Allah as al-Malik, some of these things have to be kept in mind. But I want to dig into al-Malik some more than even some of the other names. So when you think of the concept of kingdom, what are some thoughts that come in your mind? First of all is its vastness. If a kingdom is only a kingdom that's 1 square kilometer, it's not really a kingdom. But how large is the empire? How big is the kingdom? Like the British Empire, for example, at some time, or the Spaniards when they expanded at some point, right? The Roman Empire before them, the Egyptians, the great Egyptian Empire. You think of their vastness. Like even Allah mentions this concept of vastness of kingdom when the Pharaoh spoke in the Quran. Fir'aun says, "Alaysa li mulku Misra? Do I not alone own the kingdom of Egypt? Wa hadhihi al-anharu tajri min tahti." Don't these rivers flow under my feet? So what's he referring to? The vastness of the kingdom. Now, we're doing tasbih of Allah. with the word king. So when we think of Allah's kingdom, one thing we should think about is the vastness of Allah's kingdom, the size, the expanse of Allah's kingdom. You know, when I fly into Germany, I have to show my passport to be able to enter this kingdom. Give it whatever name, governance, sovereign nation, right? But I have to now observe the laws that apply here, the driving rules that apply here. If I go to England, where everything is wrong, then I have to drive on the wrong side, and the car, you know, everything's wrong. But I have to do that because that's what's right there. Okay? So the idea is, when you walk in, you are under the rule, the territorial rule of that king. And then there are signs, right? Like there are, you know, the manifestations of its might. Police, military, the monuments, the castles, the military arsenal. So Allah Azza wa Jal says that people that like to show off their power, like Americans like to show off their power with, you know, the flag and the eagle and a machine gun or whatever. That's their thing. That's their symbols of power, right? Military might, right? A militant nation. Well, you know, Allah describes Namrud, for example, who liked to show off his power, right? Alam tara ila alladhi hajja Ibrahim fi rabbih an ataahu Allahu al-mulk. Didn't you see the one who debated against Ibrahim alayhi salam only because Allah had given him kingdom? He wants to show off how powerful he is. He's going to kill someone, whoever he wants. He's going to let somebody live, right? A demonstration of his might. By the way, interestingly, the most powerful, sustained, powerful nations don't like to show off their might. The nations that are truly powerful, they don't have to show it. People recognize it anyway, but they don't have to do it. You know, the nations that are unstable politically, you know what they have to do? They have to keep reminding their people who's in charge. So they have to keep putting a picture of their king or the ruler in every place. So, hey, don't forget, that's your king. Okay, before you go to the bathroom, just say hi to the king and then go to the bathroom. You know, so they have to do that because there's no recognition of that power. It has to be forced on the people. But when a kingdom is stable, you don't have to have flags in your face all the time. You don't have to have the reminder of who the king or the authority is. You don't have to do that because it's already, the manifestation of its power is actually how smooth the kingdom is running. Almost as though in political science, the government that is the most invisible is the most powerful. You know that? And the government that's the most visible, meaning you have to bring the armies out and the tanks out on the street, and you have to have soldiers going down the street, that shows you how weak that government has become because they cannot control their nation. You understand? If you think about it from those perspectives, on the one hand, Allah's kingdom is very obvious. The entire universe is Allah's kingdom. But Allah not enforcing His rule in the most visible way, you know, al-zahir wal-batin, which was taught to us in Surah Al-Hadid, is actually one of the ways you can think about the manifestation of Allah's power. Allah is so powerful, He doesn't have to become visible in how He exerts His power. Latifun lima yasha. He's subtle in how He does things, delicate in how He does things, nearly unnoticed in how He does things. You know, and some things is very obvious, and some things is very delicate and invisible, and that's actually one of the great manifestations of the subtle. In the surahs where the tasbih is mentioned in the future tense, something in this surah is coming that's going to tie into the future, because the tasbih is also mentioned in the future. So we're going to keep an eye open for that when we study Surah Al-Jumu'ah, because the tasbih is hinting towards the future, right? So we'll see how that manifests itself. Now, let's talk a little bit more about how is everything doing tasbih. I've given you the basic overview of that. Mufassirun talk about haqiqah and lisanul hal. What does that mean? How can you say the atheist is doing tasbih? How can you say that mushrik is doing tasbih? They're not doing tasbih. How can you say the shayateen are doing tasbih? They're not doing tasbih. How can the Quran say whatever's in the skies and whatever's in the earth is doing tasbih and will continue to do tasbih when the contradiction to that exists? For everyone, believers have always been the minority, disbelievers have always been the majority. They do the anti-tasbih. So what does this mean? Allah is here referring to lisan al-hal. Lisan al-hal means the way that something is. So let me put that in the simplest way for you. If you see a beautiful painting, doesn't it speak or declare the creativity of the artist? Right? if you see a marvel of engineering, isn't that a statement about the company that made it? Right? So your work speaks for you. You understand that, right? Your work speaks for you. An amazing building speaks for the architect, right? An amazing railroad system or highway system speaks of the government that put it together, or the engineers that put it together, right? If you cooked a delicious meal, it speaks of your culinary skill. Everything Allah created speaks of His perfection. You understand that analogy? It speaks. That's called lisan al-hal. But then comes a much more difficult question. If creation is imperfect, by the way, am I perfect? No. Are you perfect? No. Is anything in the world perfect actually? No. The only one who's perfect is who? Is Allah. So now here's the problem. Here's the philosophical problem. The problem is, if I see a beautiful painting, I say the artist is creative. But then how could I see something imperfect and then say the maker is perfect? How can I say that it's perfect? Because we're saying everything declares how perfect Allah is, but everything itself is not perfect. So how is it an evidence that the maker of it is perfect? This is, by the way, a very common atheist argument. Oh, your God is so perfect? What about cockroaches? What about a rash on your skin? What about my cousin? God is so perfect. The point is, actually, I was created to live, grow, and then die. To have a life cycle. And change, by definition, change actually means imperfection. If something the only thing that doesn't need to change is something that's already perfect. If you need to make any changes to it, that means it's not already what? Perfect. Allah designed this universe, everything in it, and one thing that's constant in this universe is what? Change. Movement is change, isn't it? The subatomic particles moving inside every atom are moving, which means their position is what? Changing. Motion is change. Energy is change. All of science is the study of change. Every science is the study of change. History is the study of change. Actually, that's all we study is change. Life itself, life is defined by change, and a cell changes, right? Allah designed things to change, but change for a purpose. The change itself is imperfect, but the purpose is perfect. It's not the fact that things are perfect. It's that they were made for a perfect reason. I was perfectly created to be born at this day, of this mother, in this family, in this situation, for these years, meet with these people. The plan for all of it is what? Perfect. It's perfect. In fact, that's actually the tasbih. Everything is being done according to a plan. It's the plan of Allah for everything that's actually perfect. And that's the tasbih of Allah, that whatever's in the skies is doing and whatever's in the earth is doing. وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهُ. The sun moves according to an exact schedule and calculation. Why is Allah giving us that analogy? If you realize the sun is so precise, then you will realize everything Allah does is extremely what? Precise. But some things, the precision is easy for you to see. Other things, you can't see the precision, so you call it chaos. When human beings cannot understand a pattern, they call it chaos. Right? And so they say, oh, the universe is in chaos. Well, Allah says, no, it's in order. You just don't have the algorithm figured out. It's a little more advanced for you, so you call it chaos, but actually it's much bigger than you. It's in the ghaib. Okay? Then there's the perfection of the argument of beauty. I've talked about it in Surah Al-Hadid, so I don't want to spend too much time on it here because we have so many other things to talk about, but I'll tell you briefly. Human beings are not created like squirrels or cats or camels or anything else. We don't just survive as a species. This is not even a religious conversation. This is common sense across the board. Doesn't matter what religion somebody comes from. Human beings pursue more than just survival. Isn't that true? I mean, people want to listen to more and more beautiful music. or they want to design more and more beautiful clothes, or taste more and more delicious food, or design more and more beautiful homes. What is the common element between all of these things? For every one of our senses, we want to pursue more and more beauty, isn't it? In fact, even abstract beauty. People, even if it's not physical beauty, you just want to listen to some remarkable poetry or some amazing story, which is abstract beauty. It's just in your mind. But you want to hear it. You want to experience it. Human beings pursue beauty. Do camels pursue beauty? Do squirrels or cockroaches or ants or fish pursue beauty? No. Human beings pursue beauty in everything they do. And then we keep pursuing this thing called perfection. We're perfectionists. We want something more, and even perfectionists, even down to like, if you're just a gamer sitting there playing whatever, what are you playing nowadays? Last I knew was Roblox. Call of Duty, okay, fine. Be old school, that's fine. If you're playing a video game, if you're a real gamer, you gotta win every medal, finish 100% of the game, do the entire, get every upgrade, because you have this insatiable desire to attain perfection, to get to the most beautiful. Where do you think that thirst came from to get more and more and more? Or an athlete that wants to beat his own record, or keep pushing, because we were originally in the company of Allah, who is perfect and the most beautiful, and Allah put in us, because of that company, the desire for more and more and more beautiful. And so our tasbih is actually different than the tasbih of everything else. Allah made our tasbih even more beautiful. It isn't just even the tasbih of perfection or purpose, it's the tasbih of the pursuit of beauty. We human beings do that more than any other creature, or unlike any other creature. Then of course, I won't break this surprise yet, but tasbih in this surah is going to have a special purpose. We'll discover that as we explore this surah, inshallah. Just about this ayah also, Allah mentioned the skies do tasbih first. Whatever's in the skies does tasbih, and whatever's in the earth does tasbih. Why are the skies mentioned first? Well, they came first, so it makes chronological sense. They do a lot better tasbih than us, because angels, they flood the sky, they do a lot better tasbih than we do. And there's a lot more to the skies than there is to the earth. Quantitatively, it's much, much more. So the greater tasbih is the skies, and then we get to the earth. The word ma is also really cool. I keep translating it as whatever's in the skies and whatever's in the earth. The word whatever creates, I wrote the Arabic word here, al-ibham. Ibham means ambiguity. It's not specific. It's not specific. And that means the way that tasbih happens is not specific, and who's doing tasbih has not been specified. And you don't know, someone who is rebelling against Allah today might be doing tasbih of Allah tomorrow. You don't know. The Umar bin al-Khattab that we knew before Islam and the Umar bin al-Khattab we know after Islam, maybe 5 minutes apart from each other. Before lack of tasbih, after a person of tasbih, right? And then I wrote an Arabic comment here, تقديم الجار والمجرور على الفاعل, which actually means that it is only to Allah that everything does tasbih. Nothing else deserves it. Nothing else is that perfect. What did you learn about tasbih so far? The image I want you to keep in your head. The swimmer that doesn't what? That doesn't submerge. That's the image, yeah? Allah says, Sabbih bismi rabbika al-alim. So Allah says, make the names of Allah, do tasbih with the name of Allah. I want you to understand that concept in a simple formula. We're going to see that soon. One of Allah's names is al-malik. What does al-malik mean? Anybody? Good, the king. If you talk to anybody and say the king, are they immediately going to think of Allah, or going to think of someone else? Someone else. The Arabs of Arabia, when they heard king, is their first thought Allah, or is their first thought someone else? Someone else. The holy, al-Quddus, the holy. There were holy people, there were holy saints, there were holy priests, there were holy institutions. When you hear the word al-Quddus, the first thing that comes in somebody's mind is Allah or someone else? Someone else. When you say al-Aziz, the authority can also mean the minister, the governor. Allah or someone else? Someone else. Al-Hakim, the wise. When you say the wise one, And the average human being in the world, you say, I heard the wise one. Or I was reading, I met, or I got to know the wise one. Are they thinking about Allah? Because it must have met some old man, must have met some author. You understand? These words, the mind goes to someone other than Allah immediately. You understand that, right? Allah chose words, and Allah knows language better than we do. Allah is the creator of language. Allah chose words that take the mind to someone other than Allah. And that's part of the formula. Now I actually have to think about the king and what's behind king? Kingdom. The concept of kingdom. What's behind the holy? The concept of holiness and purity. What's behind the authority? The concept of power and authority. What's behind the wise? The concept of wisdom. I have to think about these concepts and how human beings show these concepts. And then I have to remove all the imperfections that human beings have per concept. And once I remove all of them, the name will have tasbih. Now it's ready for Allah. You understand? So actually, the words as we hear them are imperfect. They're imperfect. Now we have to do the exercise of cleaning them. And what's the exercise of cleaning them called? Tasbih. That's the exercise. So when Allah says, يُسَبِّحُ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ الْمَلِكِ الْقُدُّوسِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَكِيمِ. We're going to try to do tasbih of each one of these names. Because that's what's being demanded of us. You understand? And that's how tasbih works. It's a really beautiful exercise. It's a mental exercise and even a spiritual exercise that we're going to engage in so we can appreciate something really awesome about this opening ayah. Barakallahu li wa lakum. Assalamu Alaikum.